Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to paint a landscape with a limited palette. This is the reference photo we're using. Today I'm using a watercolor pad and I'll remove the protective paper first. Then I'm using a masking tape to get the size I want. This will be a small painting for exercise. For today's painting, I'm using a limited palette. For yellow, I will use Hansa Yellow Medium. It is a neutral yellow with a subtle cool tone. For red, I will use Cadmium Red. And for blue, I will use Cobalt Blue, which is a cool blue. I will first start with a quick pencil sketch, mainly to mark out the outline of the distant rocks and the big shapes that you can see in the foreground. Once happy with the outline, then darken the pencil lines. And add some more details as guidelines for painting later. Use a kneaded eraser to remove the excessive pencil lines. Make sure the important pencil lines are still visible. Now we are ready to paint. First, we will wet the entire paper with clear water. Now let's mix the main colors with our limited palette. We will use Hansa Yellow and the Cadmium Red to make a light orange. Use a different brush to mix some darker orange. Then mix some greens with Hansa Yellow and the Cobalt Blue. Actually, don't mix the greens evenly. Try to have a range of green shades in the mixture. I'm checking the dampness of the paper as I lay down a lot of water. It is not too wet anymore, so I'm laying down a band of warm yellow at the bottom of the sky. If you look closely, the sky is not entirely blue. I tilt the paper so that the color flows to the top of the paper. Then I take some cobalt blue and then mix it with cadmium red to make a darker blue. I use this mixture for the top of the sky. Though cobalt blue is a cool blue, by adding a bit red in it, this dark blue mixture when blending with the yellow won't turn green. The paper is pretty wet, so the pigment can flow, so you can add in more color if you find it not dark enough. For that cloud in the sky, you can just take a piece of paper towel to remove the paint while it is still damp. Also, you can remove any paint that went astray at this point. As you can see, the blue and the yellow now blend seamlessly. The mountains are mostly orange and then transition to yellow, and the lower half is mostly green. So technically, you can first cover the rest of the paper with yellow or change the colors as you go. I'll come back to these rock formations later. I will work on the foreground wet first. Since I already have some green mixtures, I'm going in with green. At this point, my main goal is to dampen the paper with the lightest shades so that I can paint wet in wet. I'm trying to vary the greens a little bit as I go because this is a small painting and I can quickly cover the paper. Some areas of the foreground foliage are in warmer colors, so it is helpful to add in some orange colors at this point too. When the paper is wet, you can always drop in darker colors. Adding cadmium red into the green mixture makes a darker green. By varying the ratios of yellow, red, and blue, you can get different shades of green for the foliage. You don't need to buy a lot of green paints. It is much more natural to mix greens. This small painting is a great exercise to practice mixing greens with a limited palette. To create some textures, I'm spraying water onto the foreground to create what is called cauliflowers or backgrounds. You can use a spray bottle or even your fingers. Now I'm looking at the reference photo and add in more details. I find splatting water helps create textures and the details more organically. You can also create textures with salt. I'm using coarse sea salt and putting in places where I want more textures. Now the paper is completely dry, I will remove the salt. I will show and discuss the effect later. Now I'm going to work on the red rock formations and add more details to the foliage. So I'm lightly wetting these two areas and mixing a dull orange by adding cobalt blue to cadmium red. And I'm using this color for these distance rocks which are a little bit blurry. So I start by painting these as the paper is the wettest now. Dropping darker colors, wetting wet to add a little details. I'm cleaning this section of the palette because I want a clean orange. I want a bright orange mixture from cadmium red and Hansa yellow. That's why I'm squeezing some Hansa yellow directly out of the tube. I'm using this color for the focal point of this painting, these red rocks. At this point, the paper shouldn't be very wet, or you won't be able to control the outline of these rock formations. I painted this in the summer, so paper dries very fast. Please take into consideration your environment when you paint. To assist better blending, you can wet the paper where you want. To have these rock formations in focus, I need to have shadows defined, so I'll come back when it's drier. Now I'm connecting the rocks to the foreground foliage. When still wet, you can always try to remove paints if unwanted. To mix a dark shadow color, I'm still using the three colors. The shadow is not black, but has some red tone in it. Once you paint the shadows, the rock formations will become 3D. Continue with the shadows. Even in the shaded area, there are value changes. Some shadows are darker and cooler, and some are warmer. So now I'm making sure the darkest parts are dark enough. bit details to the ground with a slightly darker color. Now wetting the foliage area again with clear water. I'm going to paint the darkest parts in the foliage. So I'm adding a bit ultramarine blue to create a darker tone. I'm reworking this area because now that it is dry, I can see it is not dark enough. If you can achieve the richness and darkness in one layer, of course that is better. If you want the color dark, make sure the mixture is thick enough. I am again splattering water onto the paper. The result of the previous attempt is not obvious because the paper was too wet and the paint was not dark enough. Now I'm using a plastic knife to scrape off some paint. You can use anything but not really sharp item, like credit card, painting scrapers, or even your fingernail. And this is what I have at hand. In order to successfully scrape off paint, the paper should be a little bit damp but not wet. I think I did it too early and should have waited a little bit longer. Basically, I'm redoing the step of creating textures. Now I'm putting some salt on the darkest areas. Paper is dry and you can remove the remaining salt. I considered this painting finished, so I'm just using my hand now, peeling off the mask tape, and this is the final result. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe. See you next time.